Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world watching today's episode on Decentralized Science with our very special guests, dePenrose and Traves Theberge, who I'll introduce shortly. But first, this is a collaboration between me, Nick of Bitcoin Live DB, and my good friend and co-host, Steve of DeOrganized Media. Special shout out to our sponsors, Shieldfolio, and of course our friends at Quantum Economics and Quantum Expeditions. So, Steve, how are you doing, my friend?
I am doing excellent, Nick. Great to be on a show with you again. It's been a long time since we've been on the same show together. But many people know this, that our DeOrganized project is in partnership with Bitcoin Live. We broadcast together and in partnership. And I'm really psyched about this. Huge fan of what Graham represents and what he's working towards. And very, very interested in learning more about DeSci. I'm not as well versed on the Solana side of things, but it is a very, very interesting topic, and it's real development on blockchain to help us move things forward. So, psyched, man! I'm psyched to be here.
Yeah, me too. I mean, DeSci is very interesting because it actually brings like real utility to the world. Like usually we talk about monetary and financial stuff, and that's really important too, and that helps improve things. But this whole DeSci movement is actually bringing real world utility, and in this case of SpineDAO, they're actually gonna operate on people and improve like spinal conditions, with surgeons and medical people, It's really cool, like how decentralization and blockchain and AI sort of all meet together and actually make lives better.
Yeah, exactly. That's what this is about. It's about improving people's lives, the capacity for, just crypto in general, Bitcoin, the Bitcoin ethos, the decentralized, permissionless, trustless exchange model. The whole point behind it is to allow people to retain more of the value that they create and experience that. It's about the opposite of extracting value.
Yeah.
So applying this to science and ultimately health as well is hugely important. It's actually an amazing. This is the step into the next level of things. We're going beyond DeFi, which is important also, but it's not the only thing. And we do need to have these real world cases of advancement of blockchain technology beyond just yield. That's not the only thing we're here for. So I love this conversation. I'm super psyched. I was so excited when you mentioned that it was happening at a time I could join you. So I cannot wait to get into it.
Yeah, me too. And before we sort of move in and go introduce the guests, I want to highlight this amazing giveaway that they're doing. And like us, I'm speaking for Bitcoin Live in this case. We're shadow banned, but these guys are like next level shadow ban. So if you actually want to win this awesome VIP guest experience to Abu Dhabi, the way I sort of understand it's a sort of exclusive, all-inclusive thing. But they're going to explain more about that. Hang in the show, learn more, and check how you can participate in this truly awesome giveaway that they're doing. So I just wanted to highlight that at the beginning of the show for the people watching, because this is probably a once of a lifetime experience that you can win. It's also the Solana Breakpoint 2025, which you're gonna attend. But yeah, VIP.
Yeah, that's amazing. And we'll talk more about those details too.
Yeah, so, we got like two heavyweights. We got Traves Theberge and dePenrose, and I want to do a short introduction. I'll start with Theberge. He's a full stack developer with proficiency in JavaScript, TypeScript, Go, Bash, Shell, and Python. Theberge specializes in generative AI, prompt engineering, and web software development. His work focuses on scalable AI integrations and empower organizations while fostering community involvement. He is particularly passionate about using technology to address real-world challenges, such as sovereignty and infrastructure for underserved communities. And he is the CTO of SpineDAO and Open Mission Code, which we'll also highlight later, what those projects are about. Then we got Graham dePenrose. Graham is a good friend, of course, and his resume is too big, so I have to sort of summarize some of it. But he's an expertise in AI ethics and cognitive warfare, ranked number 16 globally in cybersecurity by Gartner. dePenrose is an authority on AI neuroethics, cognitive warfare, and national security implications of emerging tech. With 35 plus years in entrepreneurship, he specializes in AI ethics, Web3 technology, cybersecurity, and corporate AI educations. And he warns about the risk of the shiny new AI toy syndrome and monopolistic practices in AI development. So that's a lot.
And that's monopolistic practices in AI development is actually a huge concern, because these tools are going to have tremendous power moving forward, and we need to make sure that as many people as possible have access to them and are developing the skills to use them, in order to prevent it from becoming this, just massive, isolated, vector for control.
Yeah, and that's something that you and me are both very passionate about. I mean, that's why we call ourselves Decentralized Broadcasting, and you call yourself DeOrganized Media, right? We want sort of freedom for everybody, and to use this tech for the betterment of humanity and for inclusive for everybody, right? And
exactly. That's the censorship resistance piece of the Bitcoin ethos. It's distributed, trustless, borderless, open source, censorship resistant, immutable. That's the word I couldn't.
Last one, yeah.
Immutability, and that's part of the censorship resistance. That's part of what it's all of those components need to be there, and we do need to apply these things to these ethics, to science, to industry, healthcare, all sorts. I mean, it needs to be
everywhere,
because otherwise we'll just continue the corporate monopolization of everything, which has been going on for centuries, really.
Yep. So we're gonna jump in. This talk will be, of course, about decentralized science, or DeSci as it's called, which will probably also be very hot, something to keep an eye on. But also a little bit about Solana, about shadow banning, and about freedom and decentralization, and how to improve lives through medical use cases of things like SpineDAO. But there are other projects out there, but they're going to tell us more about us. So, shall we jump in?
I'm ready when you are, man.
Let's go. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the show.
Thank you,
Morning.
Nicholas. Great to see you. And Steve, how are you?
I'm excellent, gentlemen. How are you guys today?
I'll let Travis go first.
Yeah, doing excellent. It's a nice, beautiful morning, 25 degrees Celsius over here in Canada. We're doing well over here.
I thought in this hemisphere we all worked on Fahrenheit. So I think it's a nice warm day for you guys, though.
It's Celsius in this side of the pond. It definitely isn't 25 in Ireland right now. It's somewhere around 9. So yeah, it's sunny and it's crisp and it's blue skies. So yeah, no complaints.
It just stopped raining here in Holland because we love rain, and the sun is shining again. So things are looking good. So
well, I lived there, right, for 3 years, and Belgium for 5. So I'm familiar with the up and down climate in the Netherlands.
Netherlands, yeah. That's very close, yeah. Yeah. So you guys are, of course, very well versed in everything DeSci. That's why we got you on the show, of course, to talk decentralized science. And so we can go different ways, of course. There's many topics that we can sort of cover. But I want to sort of start off, maybe you guys telling us a little bit about this amazing giveaway that you're doing.
Yeah, we put together a package because we're attending ourselves, and we've been doing a press release about it. We're taking up a sponsorship position at Solana Breakpoint this year, and Open Code Mission. We'll have a booth. We'll have a speakers lounge. We will have special hosted evenings. We'll also have a speaking position, although we are looking to do a keynote in one of the halls on one of the days, specifically regarding DeSci in the area of orthopedics. We're very much looking at Solana's DeSci initiative as something that, since our journey in Web3, which we have all been on for half a decade, I guess, really dug into it, we've heard this mass adoption phrase so many times. And the problem has always been friction in onboarding, and also that famous word utility. And didn't people go to great and silly lengths to try and provide utility, out of nothing? In other words, they didn't produce any value. And along comes decentralized science. And this giveaway is reflecting on our attendance and investment in attending the event, which, with 4 team members and their partners, their plus ones, is a significant corporate investment. But then this giveaway is a first class flights return, 3 nights in the Burj Al Arab, which is approximately 125 kilometers from the venue, but VIP transfers to and from each day, and VIP passes to the event.
Wow.
And that we announced that in a soft launch midweek, and the stellar lack of response has been just a absolute mirror image of what it is that we could speak about in terms of the suppression of certain voices or certain concepts. Now, one wonders whether it is just because you were on a stage with the gentleman who owns this platform once and happened to disagree with an existential point of view of his, and whether that is. But I don't hold myself in that much importance in that regard. I'm sure he's forgotten about that about 2 nanoseconds after it happened. I think it's very much got to do with what 10 years of research I've been saying, that's been coming out of my pseudonyms and non-deploons in blogs like Peerless, which is now unfortunately closed, but was operating out of San Francisco, and Tel Aviv, and had 1 million InfoSec professionals. And we spoke, one of the names, actually, Ken Crawley, is a writer for a lot of magazines, Wired, and a lot of the real big hitters, TechCrunch, in the tech industry. And she and I were big pals on that platform. The founders would not turn it into an advertising model. They would not go for the dollar. And I admired them for that, but we lost the platform. 1 million InfoSec professionals, because they tried rather to get like Juniper Networks or whomever to pay packages to sponsor talks rather than plant advertising in the middle of our video chats or our writings. And it was very much in the middle of the noughties, in the middle of the teenies, 2014, 2015, in the encryption wars, when Christopher Wray and the Five Eyes Espionage Alliance were trying to get backdoors into all of the encryption platforms. It was around the same time that Dutch intelligence took down AlphaBay and HansaWeb. We can speak more about that later. I mean, I have no problem with them taking down those. They were horrific platforms, but it's the way they did it that was questionable. We did write to Dutch intelligence about it. The lady in charge did not reply, but there's significant ethical dilemmas there. Initially, basically, they ran the business for 2 years, having acquired it, and both took and fulfilled illicit orders in order to hold up the network of suppliers and consumers of these illicit substances and services. And I don't want to tell you or speak to the disgusting nature of those, but you know what it was. And then we had Silk Road 1, Silk Road 2, and then we had this encryption war business. In Anonymous Chronic, which is another blog no longer existing, Unamused Observer, the Ergap Anonymity Collective, several French language and Dutch and German language blogs I spoke under the name of Anon de Plume, which I'm obviously not going to disclose here.
But so could we sort of summarize it that you're too critical and that didn't help you very much by being very open and transparent and critical and actually, trying to improve the space? That's clearly not what they want. Would that be a fair characterization?
Well, let me put it this way, Nicholas. Ingratiating yourself with people in order to get clout is not my gig. I don't know how better to put it than that. So, there's this dude who's very influential on X, and I hosted the first, or he asked me to co-host the first 6 of his X audio space, social audio spaces back in 2023. And he considered himself a fast friend of mine. But then it became very clear to me that he was not what he said he was, and I told him that and parted from him. Now, since then, I'm not going to name check him, but let's say he sounds very like someone else. Okay, so I don't think someone else that everybody seems to worship or not. Now, I don't worship, nor does the people I hang around with, at the altar of any individual or subscribe to the cult of the personality in any way. Also don't subscribe to the monopolistic practices of big tech in Web 2 and the 18 years of egregiously unregulated social media. Because remember, I'm an old guy. I mean, I was in New York City in Tribeca in 1993 when we were on 14K dial-up modems doing the street.com, which is still going strong today for Jim Cramer. The guy who does the press the buttons and whiz bang noises for his stock tips, which recently have fallen foul of some spectacular bad calls.
He also gives us an inverse indicator as to how to.
He's actually quite accurate if you do the opposite.
Right.
Yeah. Well, this is it, Steve. You make a good point. In fact, if you took the 180-degree angle to his advice, you're probably on the money. So, what have we done in terms of have we ingratiated ourselves? And I speak collectively here because the team at Open Code Mission, the core team, which is Daniel Gillespie, myself, Travis, Bogdan Squirtu, and Bakit Amri, we're all of the same mind. In other words, we won't dilute our principles for the dollar. But by the same token, we also spent many years in R&D under our own steam of bootstrapping, coming up with a viable business model. And this we'll speak to later because I don't want it to be just an advert for Open Code Mission. But it's a business model that can be replicated, but not with the elegance of the algorithms that we have. But people can still do it. There is a viable business model that is profitable, that still allows agency, autonomy, and sovereignty for the user, for the ownership of their own data, for the prevention of the illegal monetization of the data, for their data without their informed consent, for the disallowing of the use of their data to be scraped, like in Stable Diffusion, DeviantArt, and Midjourney to create 7.8 billion image data sets, of which we all know that there's a DCMA lawsuit in SoCal since 2023, and the three plaintiffs there are not going for a settlement. In other words, They're looking for a cease and desist takedown order for their copyrighted works, which they found. And you can go to a website called haveibeentrained.com. You can search there for whether your content has been in there. But anyway, these plaintiffs are saying, the three artists who say that they insist that they don't want compensation, that their materials were illegally scraped, included in a data set, provided as the base for the development of a tool set, which was then taken via API to create a whole bunch of other tools, and then which generated a bunch of generative art and derivative art, many of which was then found its way into the NFT space and into various other spaces, and many of which found itself on Magic Eden or OpenSea or any of the other marketplaces trading for ETH or BTC or Solana. Now, what if they win?
Yeah.
They win. I'll come back to that later because I want to move on and let Travis do his intro. But on the East Coast, we've got Sarah Silverman. And Sarah Silverman is taking Altman on the name, image, and likeness side of things. Now, we had Scarlett Johansson, who was asked to be the voice of Sky. She declined, but Altman nonetheless took a synthesized voice that was clearly 99.9% Scarlett Johansson. She didn't go lawsuit. She did a takedown, cease and desist via her lawyers, didn't look for compensation, but it just showed you that despite the explicit denial of permission, the name, image, and likeness rights were taken for all intents and purposes and synthesized. Now, that's also important because in new contracts for recording artists in the music industry, for voiceover actors, for authors and writers and screenwriters, and the Hollywood Screen Guild strike, a portion of it was to do with this. There is a clause in all of them now, which is that if you're a voiceover artist who does work for Disney, and I'm not, I'd like to qualify this by not to avoid litigation from Disney. Disney adopted an all AI strategy 18 months ago. That's not just for the production of content. That is everything. A pivot of their entire internal support services, all of the logistics and elements around it that could have AI be introduced to replace traditional supply chains. Now, part of that, and not Disney, I'm not pointing to Disney in particular, but if you did a voiceover for 30 seconds in, let's say, The Lion King, or if you were Morgan Freeman with that voice that nobody would ever forget, in these little clauses, it says that in that 30-second clip, they can synthesize in perpetuity, if you sign it, your voice for any other purpose, and you are not entitled to any royalties. So you've seen people like Robert De Niro, for example, take his nil rights and encapsulate them in a trust and allocate it as part of his estate within his will, so that he can pass it on as generational wealth and in perpetuity, whether it's a holographic or a fully immersive virtual reality rendering of him or his voice in the future or 100 years from now. So we have two really significant cases, and this is indicative of the space of generative AI in particular, which is regulation, and regulators are so far behind because of the pace and rate of change that statute and law by precedent and regulation by precedent, law and statute made in cases like this becomes the regulation and the enforcement. But of course, enforcement is something completely different, and I'll wrap up by using the example of GDPR in Europe, which is that for every breach you were supposed to have been, every breach that is just one user's data breached, you were to be fined 4% of your not profit after EBITDA, but annual turnover. Therefore, if you had 25 instances, you were 100% of your annual turnover gone to GDPR fines. But the domicile of all these multinational corporations is the Republic of Ireland. And until the EU, other 26 nations got tired of it, the Data Protection Commissioner in Ireland, because foreign direct investment from these companies represents 78% of the corporate tax take in Ireland, failed to adjudicate on 96% of complaints. And the government of Ireland joined with Apple to defend the 15 billion refund that the EU demanded be given back to the Irish Exchequer in illegal political aid to Apple over an 8-year period until it was eventually settled by the highest authority within the European Union courts, which is the Attorney General equivalent. And that money has since been gotten back and has been swiftly sent to Vanguard, State Street, and Black
Rock.
So I'll wrap up there and say that the open code mission concept itself, in terms of the open code OCDP, Open Code Data Processing Protocol, which is based on the dePenrose tabula rasa theory. If you navigate it up into the, or if you even scroll through the page, you'll see
Founder's message from Chief Executive.
That's something that's worth looking at probably at some point, but you can see that it's a business oriented mess. We are focusing on we have SMB through to corporates and enterprise conglomerate, global multinational enterprise grade both product and security. And when I say cybersec, I don't mean cybersec. I mean the new nascent domain of AI formed vectors, which was recently seen in PromptLock, the first injected ransomware into an LLM. And prompt, that's as it sounds, and then lock, no space between the two. And the behavior of AI within an organization, not just their own products, but shadow AI, the unauthorized use of products by contractors, either or full-time employees, and the people knocking on the edge using AI attack vectors, which would typically be managed by SIEM or edge defense networks. Those edge defense networks and SIEM, security incident event management systems, have no ability to take care of the defense against this seriously matured offensive AI attacks vector on an attack surface that is literally infinite at this point, such is the scale of unknowns in the space. And Luminact, which is a CISO enterprise product, enterprise dashboard for protecting and monitoring AI within the enterprise, is launching in December. It's just one of our strands. We've changed the language of the nomenclature around naming things, and we'll come to that later if you wish. We call data lumens, we call apps and app strands, and OS mission, or orchestration system mission, is the AI OS appliance that sits on any operating system but does not get embroiled in the foundational tyranny of that system and sits above it. And from that is deployed strands, what you would typically call applications, And it is in OS Mission that we license you OS Mission for all of the things that it contains in terms of memory management, sophisticated multimodality, the decaying memory against thought versus importance, the infinite context window, and the ability for each person to have a personalized experience in perpetuity across both the baseline persona and then a persona that they can create, which is their research assistant, which is the person who's helping them write their nonfiction or their fiction sci-fi book, and also a method by which those memories don't bleed into each other and pollute the baseline. And when Sam Altman, Acquis hired Mr. Johnny Ive for his design skills, he wanted to capture the hardware side of data acquisition and data points in terms of multimodality input of biometric, Fitbit type data, EEG, fMRS, fMRI type of brainwave extraction for thought inferencing, geospatial data in terms of movement and interaction, proximity data to other people. And people will say, well, what's that of interest to them? Huge, because, and I'll wrap with this, the whole domain consists of three areas: sensory, web, emotive web, and geospatial web. And when you can capture an infinite amount of data points on each one of those, then you create a digital twin of an individual, a digital twin that allows you to micro-target them, just like Cambridge Analytica, for example, would be one molecule of H2O in the Pacific Ocean in terms of capability compared to what a hobbyist with an H200 in their home office could do now with respect to manipulation.
So this is sort of like the really dark and nasty side of big tech. And you know, I'm really happy that you highlight that because, you know, many people are not fully aware of how pernicious the situation really is. But we're actually also going to talk about something really positive, right? I mean, decentralized science is actually using these technologies to improve science, but also healthcare, and actually provide real utility, like you said at the beginning, that awful word that everybody uses but was never actually used in real life. This is something that you're building with like surgeons, medical expertise, like with SpineDAO. I think that really makes me happy when I first saw this sort of movement coming from Solana. But I'm really curious because it probably also has a lot of challenges and pitfalls along the way, like how with the funding side, with the tokenomics, and there might be a lot of stuff going on that end too, right? I mean, it's probably not as clear cut as it might seem, but I'm really sort of psyched about it. And can you sort of tell us more about decentralized science and SpineDAO and maybe other projects that are out there?
Yeah, I'd like to give Travis the opportunity to do that, because Travis is without doubt the singularly most qualified person in the space regarding DeSci and the integration of it with the 4 pillars of our data protocol, and they're really easy to understand. And I see one of the commenters said, I'm a bit confused on what is being discussed with an unhappy emoji face. Don't worry, the Inspirer, it will become clear very soon. Now, I'd like to make it explicitly clear that we're not here as spokespeople for SpineDAO. SpineDAO are aware that we are here and we are doing work with SpineDAO, and that's where we leave that at. But we can use SpineDAO as an example. SpineDAO is the first Solana-based healthcare DeSci initiative. And I'm going to hand over to Travis at this point.
Sure, thank you, Graham. Lovely to be here, actually. I just, touching on it from a technological standpoint, we have the foundation of cryptographic systems, is identity and privacy as a fundamental pillar. And on top of that, we have decentralized storage, and then we have the governance layers. This is where OCM meets that, bridges that gap between the governance layer and the protocol layers that act as the driving protocols for these systems to operate. And if you can think about it as the top level, we have the research tools that are used. If we can think about different specialized research tools or specialized softwares that are used by companies, corporations, but also decentralized science organizations, DAOs, and we had, what we found is that we had to bridge that gap between how do we make both the and this is counter-aligned with big tech and big technology corporations at this time, as how do you make it explainable by design? How do you make it sovereign to the ideal of both the governance layer but also to the individual? And how do you make the protocols aligned ethically with the purpose of, say, SpineDAO or with other decentralized science organizations? And that's partially what we're solving for, is the memory layer, the orchestration of that data in alliance with the governance protocols, with alliance to the decentralized science storage rather, and having identity as the fundamental pillar of that. Validation of this data, and having a high throughput architecture that can actually keep up with that amount of data flow is a very difficult problem to solve in the age of AI. We have a high throughput of real-time data that's coming through that needs to be validated, and I think what we're seeing on the global scale through the enterprise lens is that we're seeing your data coming in, having no traceability of where that data is being stored, how it's being governed outside of the SLAs that are being applied through these enterprise organizations, and then you lose the track. So I think you lose track of that data, and I think the great example of that is potentially the Disney example that Graham brought up a while ago, having actors' voices that are taking a snapshot of that data and using it for the rest of eternity as synthetic data of a person's a voice or likeness. How do we have traceability through that process, from the identity of the person all the way up to the use of that or replication of that? And I think that is something that we have been solving, we have been working on. We want to have traceability as a foundation. We need this within every degree of the decentralized science ecosystem. That goes from SpineDAO, that goes from any other decentralized science organization out there. Any DAO that exists at this point has to have that ability to have a confidence that the software that they build upon any of the blockchains are built with that ethos in mind of what the purpose of that blockchain is for. Traceability, memory systems that actually keep in continuity with the validation layers, the governance layers, the identity layers, user sovereignty at a core foundation of this, and explainable by design. We need to get away from these asterisks at the end of a sentence going, okay, please read the back page that says 400 points about why your data is actually not secure, and why your data doesn't matter to the orchestration engines that are the big tech, that get us away from having control over our data and move us into an atmosphere where our data is being controlled.
So I can
AI,
totally understand why you're shadow banned.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it makes sense because we go in some way, the entire movement of crypto and these contracts go away from the norm of everything that we've been taught, everything that we've been taught to as a fundamental pillar of how technology works in the current day. I think moving that ball forward and having that sovereignty encapsulated by the use case is of the utmost importance. We're, so we want to develop things that are lasting, that are sovereign, that have people's best interests in mind. And I think that's counteractive towards almost every other large institution that is out there right now. But in our case, the blockchain technologies and the decentralized science are the use case for this technology. If we think of yes, please.
Can I ask a question? Because we talked a little bit about it before we went live. But for example, SpineDAO is Solana based, right? And within the crypto ecosystem, Solana doesn't have the best name when it comes to sort of as a blockchain. So I was sort of curious, like why Solana? And I love that Solana is rebranding itself, right? The whole meme thing, I'm glad that's, that they're distancing themselves from it and actually doing something positive for the world for a change. But so why Solana and how is the security and privacy and all these issues concerning Solana? Is Solana the blockchain to build upon these projects?
Yeah, I'm going to take a shot at that because I've written some articles and in the news or the blog section of the OCMXCI.com Open Coalition website, you will see that we have 30 or 40 articles. We only launched that website like 4 weeks ago. Is it 4 or 3, Travis? But here's the gig on Solana. I stand up for Solana on the following basis. I've been on the Solana bus from day one. I was there when it was $8.08 and Google had been given a validator, and we were right at the depths of the bear, sitting alongside people who had paid $280 for one sol only 6 months previously. But then we had the Fire Dancer initiative. The Fire Dancer initiative brought in Jump Crypto, part of the Jump trading group, and it proposed to rewrite the Solana validators, which are written in Rust by Solana, to rewrite them in C++. And with a background in high frequency trading, that is the very high throughput of settlements and the instantaneous settlements that are required in areas such as capital markets, stockbroking, and of course the very important need for orders to have no latency based on algorithmic based order management in the momentum trading. One of the reasons for the 2010 flash crash in the stock market was an algorithmic trading bot going out of control and causing a flash crash across the stock market. Now, the Fire Dancer initiative meant that it confused me initially because I thought, right, so if I've got a validator written in Rust that is performant to a degree of, before they put in the QUIK fix, because they didn't have a identifiable handshake mechanism so that spam requests could jump the queue, and that's why people were minting out in 10 seconds because people were hosing up all of the NFTs and then dumping them on the secondaries with fully inflated prices. In other words, they controlled the supply, and the mints were minting out in seconds because there were hundreds of thousands of spam requests which had jumped the queue. Now, the QUIK fix was put in at a time when Solana in January of 2023 and February of 2023 was not just experiencing moments where it was operating at 15 transactions per second. And I'd like to remind people, though, that is actually the transactions per second speed of Ethereum, whereas the promise of Solana was to operate at 65,000 transactions per second, which is the equivalent of the global Visa network. Now, the QUIK fix patched the error or the issue with respect to having an ID on these handshakes for the acceptance of a call to a Solana contract, and not allowing this spamming of the ecosystem, and also the clogging up of the ecosystem and reducing the transaction speed. When the QUIK fix was rolled out over a period of 12 weeks, it increased the TPS to between 5,000 and 6,000, depending on situations. And then along came the announcement of the Fire Dancer initiative, which was going to be written validators in C++, and they were going to be multiples of X performant than the Rust validators of Solana. And the question that immediately popped into my mind was, it was a bit like a penny farthing bicycle supplier going into partnership with McLaren racing cars, i.e., why does this make sense? And the Solana Foundation clearly, along with you, knew it made sense for the reason that I believe that they looked to do what they have done, which is turn Solana into a highly performant equivalent of what is a high-frequency trading platform. And for those who aren't familiar with that, that's terminology that goes back decades, which describes the capital markets and stockbroking activities of banks and their division that deals with capital markets, where they had and always have had synchronous failover at every single point of failure, not just co-location of hardware, not just co-location of data, but redundancy at the level of modular software and at modular microservices within the OS. And Solana has taken a situation where they fell out of favor as a result of problem in 23, and they saw a serious nosedive, obviously, in their market cap, and their fully diluted value dropped them out of the top 10 for quite a while. Now they are looking toward third place behind Ethereum, and are probably going to give Ethereum a good run for second place. And why are they going to do that? Because when we get to talk about DeSci in particular, what we really have with DeSci is, if you take SpineDAO as an example, Basel Debo, Virginie Lafage, Vincent Chalier, and the other surgeons who are the co-founders are globally recognized in the top 0.001% of spinal care. And by that token, their expertise, the three silos of expertise that the representation of the thing that people will interact with, whether it's an orb or whether it's an avatar or whether it's a string, whatever way people can pick whatever it is they want to see communicating back to them in the modality context, is informed by their unique practical hands-on expertise. Now remember, wellness and the provision of tips as to how to improve your posture, your spinal health, and your spinal condition is not diagnostics, because that requires FDA approval, and FDA approval is in the pipeline. But when you start to move to diagnostics, you're then providing medical advice. But what are you doing in the provision of that medical device? You are democratizing the medical advice to LMICs, low to middle income countries, who have no access to this expertise unless they have serious amounts of money, and then only in certain centralized locations within their countries. And when you break out the model further, this is why the SpineDAO token exists. This platform that SpineDAO has in the context of wellness and diagnostics is then a platform that hospitals, clinics, surgeons who run their own practices, mini practices, and other forms of spinal practices globally can pay or can contribute to and participate in for a fee. But also remember that in creating the skeleton into which all the data security, the model security, the defense against AI attack vectors, the preservation of the agency, autonomy, and sovereignty of the user data, the ownership of the data by the user and only accessible to the user, the proxying of that data if the user wishes to the Verum sphere for pure traceable data, for the training of AI models based on pure data, for better outcomes in model outcomes, which is the polar opposite to the assertion by Kissinger, Hutton, Locker, and Schmidt that we must all give up privacy and have black box algorithms because they are the ones that come with the most efficient results, but they won't be able to tell you why, is a lie. And it's a lie because it suits the data moat, siloed data silos and walled gardens, monopolistic behaviors of Web 2. And that is another reason why you will find that we, as voices, are not, and as a company, haven't taken, and people can't get their head around this idea of 10 years because Daniel Gillespie has been in it for 2 years. It's because I'm co-founder and I brought my 10 years and $5 million of my own outlay. And we have developed the entire system matching two pieces that were complementary in terms of Travis's generative AI expertise in cloud ops, DevSecOps, full stack dev, CTO at the highest caliber, while having global expertise both at the enterprise and startup level, matched with research around a new way of doing business that was 180 degrees anathema to the monopolistic practices of big tech, so that when people ask what your moat is, the very existence of the way that we articulate, handle, use, serve, protect, not just the data, but the people who own the data, goes against every principle that keeps Google profitable, Meta profitable, Amazon profitable, X profitable, and everybody else that you care to mention as we go down the cascade of big tech into mid tech, and let's not even get started with Peter Thiel's Palantir. So my old crypto bro handle was Crypto Palantir, but that was an homage to J.R.R. Tolkien and Lord of the Rings, not to Palantir Technologies and predictive policing and the horrific outcomes in Dallas and Austin, Texas, which were mandated or voted for and were rolled out without permission, which weighed and skewed heavily on racial bias. So it's with that that I would like Travis to explain something which is 10 years of research and development, but when the poster was invented, everybody said, why didn't I think of that? Because in hindsight, everything seems like, oh, that's really obvious. Well, ATI, ATM, CTI, and CTM, which are the four types of data within the Open Code Data Processing Protocol from OS Mission and the OS Mission AI appliance and Open Code Mission, are very simple to explain and consume. And I'd like to ask Travis to do that. In the meantime, I am obliged to take a 5-minute break in order to let an Amazon delivery in, but I will switch to cell phone.
No problem. Yeah? No problem. And I think Peter Thiel had a homage to Sauron when he used Palantir.
Yeah, well, actually, yesterday I actually came across, by accident, was served up a piece of news by Bing, who I don't ask for news, but it did actually give me a piece of news that, in fact, Saruman is Sauron's brother.
Oh, wow. Oh, okay.
Now, I didn't read the article, and I don't want it to become all Hobbiton and the Shire, But I am a big fan of Tolkien, not because of the trilogy by Peter Jackson, but because Tolkien, Huxley, Orwell, Chesterton, and Lewis all wrote about this coming future as almost prophetic. If you were operating 2,500 years ago, they would have been held up as prophets, because they predicted with great accuracy in an age only informed by the power of radio. And unfortunately, the person who showed the power of mass communications first and the use of flights to be in 3 or 4 places on the same day was a person in Germany in 1933, whose name I will not even speak. But the use of that person and that person's organization of radio, and Huxley, who wrote Doors of Perception, which Jim Morrison based the Doors on, and Orwell, who wrote 1984, which we all know about, was informed by the interregnum period between World War I and World War II. And what we see now, just with suits and ties and less violent language, is a return towards authoritarianism, not just in business. Back to the old days of the 19th century, when you had the railroads owned by J.P. Morgan, and the fact that he ended the shootout at the OK Corral and the Cowboy War was not just an episode. It was a hugely important, fundamental thing which happened in the territories, that J.P. Morgan couldn't get the London financiers to agree to give him the money to buy out the railroads because the territories were unpoliceable. And as a result, the weak president at the time sent the army in almost, which was against the post-Civil War declaration that the U.S. Army could not be deployed on U.S. soil, thus the National Guard. So we can come back to that later. There's an excellent documentary and docu-movie about the Cowboy Wars. And it was around the same time as the 1871 Bank Act, which led the first act of the trajectory of the 1913 Federal Reserve Act, which led up ultimately to FDR's 1933 and 1934 Gold Reserve Act, where the government set a static price by law that all US citizens had to surrender their gold. And then when they had all the gold, they doubled the price and funded the Great New Deal based on the ink on a pen, changing the price of an ounce of gold from $9 to $20, and thus giving the money to fund the Great New Deal. So I'm going to hand over to Travis to talk about how we deal with lumens, how lumens, by the choice of the user, can be, and they are monetized for it, given to the verum sphere, verum being Latin for truth, which is the building up with patience of training and test data that is pure, not misinfo, disinfo, opinion as fact, and scraping 15 million hours of YouTube nonsense to get enough parameters in ChatGPT-4 so that you could play out the parameter war with DeepSeek or with Grok, because that's not the measurement that you want. What you want the measurement of success of is a quality of outcome, of benefit, of knowledge in the model, and a traceable source of truth, not based on gatekeeper fact checkers, which for all intents and purposes are the same as Moody's in the 2008 financial crash, who kept the news from the public for 72 hours while the big firms unwound their positions. So the 401k retail investors then, when they did find out the bad news, found that 95% of their 401ks were now worthless. So with that, I will also take this Amazon delivery, leave you with Travis, but move to the cell phone to listen to his response. But take this delivery. The Amazon guy has just texted me and said, "Do you think I am here solely for it?" I won't say what he said.
Your package is waiting.
Yes, thank you, Graham, for that. Graham made a wonderful point about the lumens, as we call it, the data representation layer of data. And to the point of Solana, we were talking about why Solana. Well, we have the options of centralization, decentralization. We have a high throughput of validation or validation within these data types. So if we take acquired type immutable, this is sensory data. This might be X-rays. This might be scans. This might be information that is immutable, that cannot be changed from one thing to the other. That might be a record from your doctor. Now, within the compliance, we have to think about, where can this live? Can it live on a ledger, or is that a compliance issue that would go against HIPAA, or is that a compliance issue that would go against XYZ new standard that's being approached, or encroaching on the user sovereignty to whether they're able to share that data, or whether that data is actually owned by the hospitals. So, with that in mind, we have to look at how these data types are shared. Acquired type immutable, mutable, that is, the 3D models. That might be a model that is editable. That might be something that a doctor or a person goes into and is able to work with and open up and change and have this layer of mutability within it. And then we have created type immutable. That's the final sign. This is the final purpose document. This is the forever document. This is the validated source. And then we have created type mutable. This might be the collaborative works in progress. This might be the DAO's work, as it were, of validating sources of material or protocols that are being added to. So you have a data source coming in that's being worked on. You might have 50,000 researchers working on that globally. So having this data schemas that are transmutable through and mutable and immutable through the layer of, say, a Solana, or through Bitcoin, or through Ethereum. The reason that that I think that Solana fits the bill is that high throughput. If we look at a Bitcoin, we're looking at 7 to 10 transactions per second. Up to 10 minutes of
10-minute blockchain, transaction time.
Right, time.
Which is being solved on Stacks.
Yep.
But Solana has also the users right now.
Yep.
I can see a lot of reasons for Solana, and I'm generally chain agnostic. I love Bitcoin. Yeah. It was the first one. None of it actually works without Bitcoin, really, in my opinion. But Bitcoin's not the development layer. There's not transaction throughput capacity to really do what you can do on Solana right now. And Solana's cheap to use, it's fast. You got a lot of users there. I can understand a lot of reasons why Solana is the place to build on for what you're looking at right now, because it checks a lot of the boxes you need to check for functionality, plus the commercial side of actually being available to a larger user base.
Right. And if you think of things that are being validated at a high rate of throughput, reliability, while important, we have the ability to revalidate and create contingencies and failovers for those validations through the records and through these four types of mutable, and bringing that process forward, those protocols forward. I think ideally chain agnosticism is ideal, but when we're talking about a high throughput of validation of data coming through, say, institutions that are centralized and decentralized, when we're talking about data that's on chain, off chain, if we're talking about smart contracts, or the ability to have smart contracts in very specific protocols at a very specific point, I think Solana fits that bill for the developer. And we have a growing pool of developers that are in the ecosystem. So I think overall, bringing that message forward, while I think that any one of the chains could represent and has the opportunity to fill a void or fit a purpose. Having a ubiquitous understanding of exactly that process led us to the Solana chain. I think it does check the boxes as far as the ability to be malleable and fit the 4 types of these lumens that we've discussed prior.
So, because you said a couple of things, you've talked about it being immutable and mutable, and decentralized and centralized, and I understand the concept. So, is it basically that you can kind of code it in both directions depending on how you need to use the data on Solana?
Correct. So if we go back to my earlier statement about where the AI or the research memory systems live in relationship to the chains, they sit on top. We have the identity layer, we have the data layer, we have the governance layer, then we have the memory layer, which is OCM's expertise in that area, and in that we have the processing of acquired type immutable, mutable, and then you have this created type mutable and immutable layers that need to fit the bill towards whichever governance layer, DAO layer, processes that is very, very highly dynamic. If we're talking about HIPAA compliant data, that has to be processed in a different way than generalized validated data that might be assigned to a data point that is hidden in a decentralized ledger, but the validation is in front and center and validated on a centralized ledger that we have viewability to. So the importance is within the DAO that data is secured as an internalized process, but validated by the community at large. So we have this ability to have this interaction between those two different layers, and we have to be dynamic, especially as business processes, as a layer of ability for decentralized science has people coming from all different works and walks of life. We have the patient, we have the user perspective, and we have the researcher and the clinician perspectives, and they all have different orientations. So if we say that there is a research paper that has been validated through XYZ measures on chain, that might meet the criteria of the CTI or CTM, right? The collaborative work in progress.
I kind of understand. It's a little bit deep, but I basically, it's just you have different needs for different things you're going to do with the data and different people that are going to interact with it in a different way, plus regulatory, like HIPAA, where you can't obviously have that on an open ledger that everyone has access to the data. It's got to be privatized. It's got to be kept private and secure. So how do you do that? Without having both mutability, immutability, and centralization and decentralization, and it's about finding the right balance, really, at the end of the day. So I mean, it seems like it does. Like it makes. I know a lot of people that are building in crypto, and a lot of guys that try out different blockchains, and a lot of them. I mean, I'm not. It's not just Solana. There's tons of options in the marketplace, but Solana actually is. Ethereum was great when they went to they had to go to proof of stake, because they couldn't process the throughput with proof of work. Solana already and Solana already had done it. So Solana just iterated the smart contract layer sooner than Ethereum. And they've gotten this massive throughput capacity. It's cheap to build on. It's easy to build on. It's easy to use. And it can do all the things that you need it to do for what you're building. So, I mean, it makes sense to me,
Yeah, I think it works, it works as a primary consensus mechanism. I mean, you do have that proof of stake, delegated proof of stake, that the weighted validation, right? But also you have the slashing mechanisms that are underneath. And this is a highly dynamic process when you're talking about how data is used. I mean, we can look at it as data is coming off of your table, going onto a table, and then coming off that table onto another table. And we can talk about that positionality of real life and digital markers. But we want to make sure that we're having that traceability within the dynamic that meets all of the directionality of that data and how it needs to be processed within the contingency of the protocol of XYZ company or decentralized organization or individual. So, I mean, having that controllability at a high level is paramount. And having these ability to really map the purpose onto the individual processes. And while it is complicated, and it is complicated because we're looking at a highly dynamic process and how we're managing data. But if we can root it into something realistic, if we're talking about your data, Steve or Nick, your data as you are typing into a chat GPT or a front end or a document. How is that data preserved throughout its lifetime? How is it archived? Where is it stored? It might be stored at your decentralized place. It might be stored in a centralized place. So I think it's really important for us to really understand and have confidence of those how your data is transmitted over a blockchain or over with a smart contract, how the dynamic process changes how your data is used from mutable ledgers to immutable to internal, decentralized, and centralized. So having traceability from end to end.
Yeah, and I think, I listened as I was dealing with the Amazon guy to the question, and there's a very, very important point to make here. Nobody who uses any of these systems needs to be aware of any of what we've just spoken about. And there's because the research is a decade of my work in the tabula rasa theory for the sensory web, the tabula rasa theory for the motive web, and the tabula rasa theory for the geospatial web, I can offer a very simple example of what those four things mean to the ordinary person. And they are this. Let's take the cell phone as an example. If you're at a wedding and you're taking a shot of the bride and groom, that is an image of a point in time that has no reason to be changed unless it's for aesthetic touch-up. But let's just assume you aren't going to do aesthetic touch-up. Similarly, if you have President Trump give a speech to the Congress, that's a matter of record, goes into the National Archives. If you have a person being interviewed on TV, that is an opinion that is given, and it is an acquired type, immutable asset, because the method that is associated with it means that it was a source of truth that there is no reason to change. But what else does this protocol allow? Well, out of context usage, either by propaganda by omission, such as showing a segment of a picture which portrays an entirely different context than the actuality of what happened, or out of context quotes based on what was before and after them, are used at scale in mainstream media and in political campaigning and in daily life. In the open code mission world, when that happens, a little red dot appears on your screen, and it says, this is an extract from a piece, and it will give you the date, the time, and the full representation of the image, the video, or the speech. you do not have to rely on going to a fact checker, which is a gatekeeper, and have their opinion on what it is, because they're politicized or NGO funded by some ideological group and will give their subjective view of whether it's a fact or not. Community notes are an excellent example of subjectivity in action.
It's goofy, right? We have this subjective source of truth. Like it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Or even take Wikipedia, right? It's like a
Yeah. So it goes directly to what are the components of truth, and that's where I started my research. The components of truth are: the base is absolute truth, and there are only three that everybody on the planet can agree on. One, that we shall all die. Two, that we are all born of the union of a man and a woman in the context of the natural order of things. And three, that we will ultimately be born of a woman. Okay? They are three absolute truths that everybody everywhere can agree on, except a small minority who think otherwise, and I don't want to get into that quagmire. Now,
to be honest with you, even those things,
immortality.
you're still assuming that what we're experiencing is true. You have to assume, because all we really do have is our subjective experience and filter. So we can't actually experience absolute truth. But
we can't. And this is the point, because that's the only three things that the vast majority of people can agree on. But sitting on top of that is complex truth. And complex truth has three components: objective, subjective, and normative. Now, subjective truth is obvious. It's your personal opinion on something. Objective truth is some agreement or consensus between people to agree on a certain point. And normative truth is that we all agree to call today Saturday. Right. That's complex truth. The three components of complex truth. And then on top of that, we have relativism. And that is the difference in the attitude in the Netherlands versus France, or in España, or in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, or in the Kingdom of Cambodia, and is based on inexact social sciences such as belief systems, religions, moral codes, societal norms, and they vary widely. Now, if a universal system of AI is going to exist, the preservation of the diversity, and I don't mean that in the context of what most people think of diversity as, but tribes, for example, who are in northern Canada, who have their own, and Travis as a First Nation member can speak to this, the preservation of their own language and the preservation of their own history. That's not an LLM or an AI tool that they're giving for the benefit of the world. That's their preservation of their oral history. That's for them. And by the same token, to proxy that to monolithic behemoth large corporates whose view, if you look at our human future in the age of AI 16-minute segment, which had Eric Schmidt, former CEO of Google, former chairperson of the US Intelligence Committee on the Use of AI and National Security, which contained 16 members and only one woman, and the rest from the three-letter agencies, and is now busy giving kamikaze drones at $400 under Project Eagle to the Ukrainians. He, along with Martin Huttenlocher, a hedge fund manager, and Henry Kissinger, the late Henry Kissinger, said three things in that 16 minutes. Number one, they said that humans only began to reason after the age of the Renaissance, which I feel sorry for Plato and Socrates and other friends in that regard. Secondly, they said that all AI should be informed by Western belief and value systems.
Wow. Okay.
And thirdly, they said that in order for accuracy in algorithms, AI algorithms, that it was incumbent on everybody to give up their privacy without any protestation, because it would result in better answers from black box algorithmic specific algorithms, because they gave the best outcomes. And open,
if they were willing to give everybody, equal ownership of that data, that might be fair.
But they're not.
No,
of course not. Is that since the 1990s Microsoft hearings, the Antitrust Sherman Act, the only ruling which is a chink of light in a move in the DOJ towards a possible breakup like Standard Oil of Google and other organizations, was the ruling against Google for fraud in ad tech, which was delivered about 6 months ago, and anti-competitive practices with respect to the capturing of the ad tech market. Now,
that was recent.
Yeah, this was about 6 months ago in DC, District of Columbia. So we have had at last an antitrust ruling. Now on the comment while I was dealing with the Amazon guy, there's no and I know what Travis was referring to. There's no centralized and decentralized component. It is fully decentralized, because in your cell phone, it's a sensory device, but also so is the satellite, but so is the thermometer on the side of the boiler in your heater in your house, as is the thermostat on the side of what measures the critical temperature of the core in your nuclear reactor. They all give off a signal, whether it's SCADA based or whether it's based on some other protocol. The sensory web, in order to track the source of truth, must realize that the registration of those devices and the creation of composite cryptographic signatures, which is what is stored on blockchain, because blockchain doesn't exist in its truest form if it has so many off-chain articles and third-party guardian type protocols that for all intents and purposes, it's a Web2 server with a distributed ledger sitting on top that performs about 10% of the functionality. So you have a situation where there are blockchains in name only. So how do you avoid that? Well, if, say, for example, Steve, you want, as the B2C offering, to use one of our open co-admission products, which might be a loyalty card reward system, then you'll register your phone. Yeah, they will. Our algorithms will then take a unique identifier from the cell phone, and it will do an encrypted hashed cryptographic signature of that, and it will store it on blockchain. Secondly, it will then take the composite pair of the device and the camera. It will create a cryptographic hashed signature of the camera, and then it will combine that with the previous one from the device and make a third, which is a composite cryptographic hash signature of the camera device combination, and the same with the microphone. And then when anything is acquired from either of those two devices, you will have metadata tagged onto the data. That means that the data travels with its own set of rules. So if it's a photograph of a family event, or a video of a family event, or a reporter's recording device at a press conference, it will immediately fall into the acquired type immutable. It cannot be augmented because it was what was said. It can be, elements can be taken out from it, but it cannot be obfuscated, infiltrated, manipulated, retracted from, or in any other way manipulated. Now, if you've acquired type mutable, you have a situation where you, in an MRI computer, or CT scan, computer tomography scan, where you've slices of a spinal cord in the SpineDAO context, where it's an acquired type mutable because it changes over time as the condition changes. But once the diagnosis, so for example, if you're measuring the ratio of fat to muscle in the vertebrae, which can sometimes point towards a certain pathology in the spine, then once you have performed the action of diagnosis automatically using the algorithm that they will have written in their diagnostic strand, that is then, once it's been processed, locked in from ATM, mutable, to ATI and placed on the permanent record. Now, created type immutable is, let's say, research and development environments, where 6 researchers are creating a set of experiments where they want to add their results to a collaborative document. This created type immutable document will have rules just like you would have in normal life, but much more sophisticated as to who can add to and take from the data within that document. However, when they have finished their results, it's converted from created type mutable into created type immutable, because that's a research paper, and one of the biggest attack vectors and the hardest to detect is the movement of a decimal point 1 digit to the left or 1 digit to the right, especially in drug discovery, which knocks off and skews the output significantly. And we have found in the wild tens of thousands of times, and is normally either done by a competitor or a group proxied by a nation state actor to interfere with the research of a adversary in the geopolitical context, say in the development of defense and or pharmaceutical products. So when I explain it in those terms, that's just explaining it in the weeds. In the reality of it, what does it mean to people who are using it? They need to know nothing about this, because it just means when they take a photograph, they know that it can never be augmented, obfuscated, manipulated, or for that matter, dragged into a data set like the so-called DCMA, Digital Millennium Copyright Act case I spoke about earlier, because it won't be allowed. 2, if they have an acquired type immutable object, they'll know that when they're finished with it, they will be locked down, their results for all time, and trackable in perpetuity, even after the device or the group of devices which collaborated on it no longer exists 10, 15, or 1,000 years from now. And the same with the created type mutable and immutable. So what does it do? They also have it in the ecosystem of the Verum sphere, which is what we call our archive, our storage platform, which is where they store their data. And not only that, but within OCM Bazaar, as in Bazaar, B-A-Z-A-A-R, marketplace in the Arabic world, companies get to expose their products and services by plugging in an API to expose their products and services. An exchange of value occurs within OCM Bazaar. And then the person receives their product or service, and the company receives their remuneration. But because it's not federated or centralized identity, they don't get to drop data agents, user agents, cookies, or any other advanced tracking mechanisms on the web browser or on the device or anything that they're using, so that the analytics stay with the user, and the user can opt in to have that and their analytics added to other people who opt in, and take the brokerage, the data brokerage market, which exceeded oil as the most valuable commodity globally last year, and sell it themselves via the brokerage services that are offered as unilateral and independent within the open code mission ecosystem to those who want them, and split the money pro rata based on the number of analytics they had each contributed to the overall data store. So now their data is their own, the monetization of it is their own, and if they want it to be made available for training, then again, it is sold with an expiry date on it for self-destruction, so that if EEG, electroencephalogram waves, FNIRS, frequency near infrared spectroscopy, and functional magnetic resonance imagery, which is what those goggles do to infer the electronic signals from your amygdala and your brain to infer thought, which there are many projects out there at the moment trying to get people to wear headsets in return for small crypto payments, because there's very small data sets, not big enough yet, to create the type of tools that will allow organizations to create mechanisms by which to manipulate or infer, which we call nowcasting, not predictive analytics, but nowcasting, what you're going to do next. And when I was on an AMA with one of the people in that, the CEO was happy to answer my question, which was, as a SaaS product where they were supplying it, they had ethical guardrails. But when they sold that data set to an organization, how are they going to extend those ethical guardrails inside the walls of the castle of that corporate organization? At which point the VC chaperone stood in and said, I think that's enough. Thank you very much, Mr. dePenrose. It was a Mario Nawfal show, and they were sponsored guests, and I got a angry email off of one of the assistants afterwards for stop going heavy on these people who are paying to be on these Nawfal shows. So in the totality, gentlemen, what we're speaking here today as people who are interested in the weeds is never going to be seen by the people who use it, but what they will see is better, faster, quicker, and income earning. Plus, they will once again start to have trust in the data they see, the models they use that are not just large language models, and that's only a narrow AI, by the way, but they're not just inferring the next best guess. They have injected in profit-driven and politicized dogma. We know the examples of that. It'll write a sonnet about Joe Biden, but not about Donald Trump. And they will know also that they don't have to go to some third-party gatekeeper fact-checker, because they know where the source of truth is, and they know it cannot be manipulated. So the Solana blockchain and projects like SpineDAO, when it comes to HIPAA compliance, when it comes to the EU AI Act, when it comes to the California Data Privacy Act, our data centers reside in London to cover post-Brexit Britain, in Paris because of the lack of latency between London and Paris, for a European location to satisfy the EU 27 and the other 46 nations of Europe, in San Francisco and LA to cover the highest privacy laws out of the 50 states, and therefore the other 49 get the top tier level of nil protection rights, PII rights, personally identified information rights, and the rights to their own DNA, which, by the way, you don't own in the United States of America. And In Asia Pac, in Singapore and Hong Kong, and in Sydney, Australia, we play again there too, to the local requirements. And how do we do that? We have an REI risk matrix that looked at all of the statutes in all of the areas and measured each one on a grade of 1 to 5, 1 being low bar, 5 being high bar. And we architected the compliance, governance, and oversight protocols to play to the highest requirement of the matrix, so that people in the United States who had a 2 in the privacy aspect, whereas the EU has 5, now get the type of privacy protections under the EU AI Act that do not apply for things in certain areas in the United States of America. And we also have the ability, Max Schrem's 14-year effort now, the Austrian lawyer who took down Privacy Shield and Safe Harbor as the data sharing mechanisms between the EU and the US, when he demonstrated the abuse of them by the movement of European citizen status to the US and vice versa. Max Schrems, the Austrian lawyer, one-man tour de force. It started out with one query for his own data from the Irish Data Protection Commissioner in 2011, and has done more for data protection for the individual, and he's hardly heard of. But look him up, Max, Schrems. And,
Yeah.
and finally, I'll wrap with this. You will always have to have a foot in the real world tyranny of coming CBDCs, UBI, and all that other nonsense that centralized power tries to push on you, because you need a driver's license and you need a passport. And while China has the social index and doesn't mind talking about it, well, so does the USA and Europe, but they just have it with a different type of paint on the outside of it that looks like protection rather than submission. And you will also have to have a foot in Web 2, because some services are just going to stay there, especially financial services, because they have a huge cost of ownership in legacy infrastructure, legacy software, massive business transformation programs, and they haven't yet written the assets off their books yet under EBITDA for maximum dividend return to their shareholders. But you also have a choice now to operate in an agency preserving, autonomy preserving, sovereign, and democratized environment, such as OS mission informed strand deployment, and in contexts like SpineDAO, where you're dealing with the most sensitive and the most rigorously guarded data, which is health data, SpineDAO will be the example setter for DeSci on Solana, and Solana will be the example setter for the ability to take the cryptographic signatures, which is what we're storing on their blockchain, in purity without any articles, because we don't need to improve speed for such tightly bound, highly elegant algorithms. But then we use that to reconstruct the data, and that data can exist sitting on a tabletop, but nobody will be able to use it, because the keys to the kingdom are on the blockchain in those composite signatures, and the only way to get at them is to know the algorithm behind OCDP, and you'll never know that, because guess why? That's also protected by the quantum proof type of elegant algorithm that we have spent a decade creating. And it still hasn't got into the head of those who are the hate makers, who say that some of the team are in their mid-20s. So what, they were 14? No, I'm 57. I started this when I was 47. I met some other people like Travis who are in the business a few years less than me. And
A
together,
little younger.
and we came together, and with $5 million of my personal outlay, but by the same token, in my other businesses, we were doing profitable projects, but we weren't allowed to retain the IP. But I was able to use those profits, which were my dividends from my company, to fund my own personal research. I didn't have a group, it was my own work. And therefore, we also in Open Code Mission are fully bootstrapped with our own money. We have a break even 3 months after becoming a trading entity without loan, overdraft, credit card, investor, grant, state aid, or anything. And we have no creditor overhang.
That's another reason why they don't like you.
Right. And we just happen to know what we're talking about.
Yeah, that's a dangerous combination. And, I just wanted to sort of link back to something that you said. Like, I'm often critical and harping on Europe for, obvious reasons. But they do, of course, also good stuff, especially when it comes to law and protecting privacy data. I think you were the one who once said me, like, you have this balance between big government and big capital, and you have to sort of, there should be a balance there, and both extremes are dangerous. Like, I sort of want to wrap up the final part and ask you a little bit about sort of the others out there, like Bio Protocol, and I think what's VitaDAO, and there's some others. Like, could you speak to that, to what they're doing, or?
Well, Bio Protocol is the stable from, well, it's a launchpad, right? So there's been a number of recent launches from it, and SpineDAO was launched from the Bio Protocol launchpad, and by that token, they began their journey. I don't mean by that use of token is by that measure they came to market with their token generation event. Bio Protocol, by all accounts, the structural strands which represent what SpineDAO are implementing as pioneers in healthcare, they can then offer that for oncologists, urologists, emergency medicine, and all the other domains of specialist and non-specialist medicine and general medicine, and can do so because the only thing that changes is the knowledge bases that are ingested into the base data that informs the model, and then over time they build up their own relationships with their patients in the context of oncology, urology, neurology, psychology, psychiatry, and so on. So Solana, DeSci, and Solana Foundation, and the Solana blockchain, with SpineDAO's groundbreaking and world first healthcare initiative, will be, in my view, the marquee topic at Solana Breakpoint December, because between then and now, we're not in a position to say, but between then and now, I have never met a group of people so dedicated to their discipline as Virginie Lafage, who, by the way, spoke at DeSci Boston yesterday, Basel D.A. Vincent Chalier, and excuse me, the fourth co-founder, Baudouin. They have set the tone. They have set the bar. They have set the yardstick by which others will measure their ability to put their discipline with a set of evolving, and this is very important to wrap up with, within Open Code Mission and OS Mission, the Orchestration Learn Mission AI appliance. As regulation changes, you do not need a rewrite of the code. the algorithm itself augments or changes by the methods by which we have integrated the protocols with the governing law, the compliance and regulatory landscape, so you don't have any periods of time where you're out of governance or out of compliance. And I think that's incredibly important to point out, because that is a non-trivial problem to solve, and it is a problem that we solved in OS mission, and it is something that the strands and the lumens created from the strands will benefit from, which is nobody will fall foul of regulatory compliance or oversight, either by mistake, accident, or otherwise, as a result of a rapidly changing environment, especially in health. And HIPAA and SOC and NIST and ISO, similarly, as they start to pad out their standards for multimodal. And remember, in rolling releases of SpineDAO, you will have wearables inputting into the system. You'll have AR, and the AR glasses will be engineered to work on the cheapest glasses, not the 10K a set that you see dudes coming on with and saying, you know, everybody can afford this just because they live in Palo Alto. SpineDAO, to me, in a 35-year self-employed career, albeit with 3 exits in 3 very different domains, but a thread of technology through them all, has been a most exciting journey, a unbelievable moment, which only comes, in my experience, every 15 years, where you see the opportunity. It's not called disruptive. It's not called disintermediation. It is the creation of an entirely new domain and paradigm. And it's going to be an eye-opener to people to see the possible when you stop talking about the weeds, when frictionless onboarding to Web3 has been achieved, which we have done, i.e. you don't need to go and figure out what a SEX is, what a DEX is, how to get a Solflare or a Phantom wallet, how to get your fiat into, then convert it into a crypto, then get that crypto into a particular project, then get some of the project stuff, and then somehow store that stuff without getting ripped off, scammed, hacked, and generally spammed by bad actors, which are out there, not only now using traditional methods, but AI informed. So all of that you're immune to in this new and wonderful age of DeSci using open code mission.
Graham, can I also ask you to sort of explain to the viewers how they can actually participate in the giveaway? What do they have to do to win that prize?
Sure. Well, we're going to put it up on the website over the weekend, because we did a soft launch to see the reaction. And considering we got no entries, we thought, well, and we ran advertising, by the way, not only just on Google or on LinkedIn and X, but on Google too. What they have to do is typical of what you would have to do in Web3, I'm afraid. I hate to play to the the cliche, but I mean, at the end of the day, we have to get something back for it too. So you follow the team members, the 4 team members, you follow the page, you tag 3 friends, and there's one other thing to do. Now, the terms and conditions are going to be published on the website. There must be a minimum number of entries, and we've set that figure at 20,000.
And then one person can win the prize, right?
One, yeah.
Yeah.
And it will be done publicly, and it will be done using the auditable tools that are available to show a fair. It'll be done live. And working with the Premier League in 2015 and 2016 with Liverpool, Manchester, and Everton football clubs on an anti-ticket tout initiative. If you look at Redmen TV and search for John Aldridge and Graham Penrose, you'll see my interview at the event at Formby Golf Club, where we brought the Liverpool legends and the Everton legends together to play. People like, well, you guys wouldn't know. Oh, well, you would probably, but Paul Ince and John Aldridge and Robbie Fowler and many household names in the UK and in Ireland, who was very taken up with the British Premier League. We gave away, 5-star packages. We had people meet Coutinho. We had people be given VIP packages to the director's box in Old Trafford, in all the stadiums. We had tens of thousands of dollars to give away. So we have a good track record in that. So, but there does have to be a minimum amount of entrants. I mean, we're not going to give away a prize with 3 entrants. If the message, what we're going to do is, after 2 weeks, if we don't see a couple of thousand entrants, we're going to pull it, because it's simply just not fair on us to be offering something which is not able to be seen because we are so suppressed by a man who allegedly believes in free speech.
Yeah, so for everybody watching out there, please enter. You can win an amazing exclusive, all-inclusive VIP treatment to Abu Dhabi and the Breakpoint Solana event of a lifetime, which is like an awesome prize. I'm probably gonna participate myself. I think I already did, and we'll link down the the requirements underneath the video. So for people sort of that want to join, please join, because then actually somebody can win. Otherwise, nobody will win. And I want to thank both of you for being on the show, on DeOrganized Media and on Bitcoin Live BB. We learned a ton of new stuff, and you guys are walking encyclopedias when it comes to this technical stuff, right? Which is way above my pay grade. I mean, I know some of it, but the way you guys explain it, it's like I realize that I know nothing, right? So thank you for being on the show and for educating us. And is there any closing words, Graham?
I would like to say that I think Travis, if we've lost him, it's a result of his connection. Oh, there we go. He's back. Right now, because of the incredibly poor response, if you go to my page, because that is where we didn't put it on the official Open Code Mission page because of the appalling, we had a post which pointed at my post, but because of the appalling suppression of our pages, if you scroll down on my page there, yes, so on there, if you open up that that post beginning there, you'll see there's 3 parts of that thread. That's your go-to starting point. Now, we will take that, put it on the Open Code Mission page and also on the website. But right for the now, everything you need to know to enter is there. And we will, by Sunday evening, have the terms and conditions, everything you see in there, and we will give one final attempt at a push. We spent $2,000 advertising this, and we got no entrance. We got 400,000 impressions, and we got 1 click. Don't ask me how that works on X, but there you go. So if you want to run through it real quick, one lucky follower of Open Code Mission X and LinkedIn pages will receive first-class flights, accommodation in Burj Al Arab, the world's only 7-star hotel, by the way, and passes to Solana Breakpoint, including access to our curated experiences and exclusive engagements with leaders shaping the future of DeSci in AI and healthcare. You'll also have VIP transfers because, as I said, Burj Al Arab is a 125-kilometer drive from the location of Solana Breakpoint. But it'll go like that when you're in a limo, air conditioned, and if you do fancy a glass of champagne at 8 in the morning, then I guess that's up to you. Now, hidden tip for those who read this: you've got to follow me here on X and follow the Open Code Mission page, which the link is in my bio. You've to leave a comment, tag 3 colleagues, and retweet and like each post in this thread. Now, I don't think that's a lot to ask for people.
No, it isn't. No.
And it takes very little time, and I'm sure we'll see. Now, one thing there will be in the terms and conditions, bots will be excluded. And we have an algorithm that will maintain a database. Someone said, "Where's the link?" I think the link. But yes, please share the link. By all means, bots will be identified, and we will keep a link on under the terms and conditions for all those disqualified. Okay, and a bot is somebody without a profile pic, without a banner pic, or who has joined X in the last week. Okay, that's all. It may be a real person, but the problem is that could be the same person doing multiple accounts. Okay, now it's not restricted. We were thinking about restricting it to verified accounts only, but we thought that was exclusionary because there's people who can't afford verified accounts, and that would be unfair.
Yeah. Plus, you want to reach an X number of entries.
Yes. But what I will say is that we want to give the prize away, but we don't want it to be robbed by a bot firm, by our bad actor. So we're going to be incredibly rigorous, and the terms and conditions will show that. The person who wins this will be a you, a me. I don't mean you or me. It will be people like us who want to go, who've entered in good faith.
And when is the event? That's, I think, in December, early December.
Right, the date's right there. Just as I move out of the way, you'll see.
11 and 13.
13th of December. So you have a full 3 months, people, to get your entries in, and we would. I mean, I don't know if you've been on a first-class Etihad flight, but I have been not at the cost of a client, because I wouldn't pay for a first-class flight if I was King Midas, because I'm willing to have a little bit of discomfort rather than part with $20,000, which one of my sons could use for far better in capitalizing his business than giving to an aircraft just to stop me having a bit of a sore bum for 3 or 4 hours. First class flights return one person. Okay, it's not because you will be chaperoned and have company. There's one winner. It's not like one winner plus one. It's one winner. They will have their Burj Al Arab experience, and they will have their Solana passes. They'll have their VIP transfers by chauffeur-driven vehicle to and from morning and evening. And if they choose not to come back, that's their own business. They just they'll have the number of the chauffeur, and they could just say, I'm not needed tonight because I happen to meet, I don't know, somebody who I fancy staying here with.
Oh yeah, I've been on one such flight because my aunt used to be like head purser at KLM. So that I had one first-class flight to Kenya one time, which was really amazing. Also an amazing experience, Kenya, by the way. But
yes,
yeah, awesome prize, Graham. Awesome work that you guys are doing. I mean, it's not just in crypto, but I think for the betterment of humanity itself. And stay critical, stay who you are, and let's do another show.
Absolutely. We're always so pleased, whether people are aware of it or not. Myself and Nicholas maintain a conversation once every 2 or 3 weeks, and maybe every 2 or 3 days on Telegram. Bitcoin Live DB have been very good to me personally on the cognitive warfare series that I did. We did a joint venture on the Brain as Battlefield of the 21st Century. They did great graphics that I just didn't have access to at the time. They always run superb interviews like this. The Nicholas is a nice person. Steve, it's the first time I've had the pleasure of meeting you, sir, but again, it doesn't surprise me that you get the vibology from person very quickly, and I'm not the slightest bit surprised that you're bros and colleagues in what you're doing. And peace, love, music, man. I just this morning, to accompany my morning routine, I played Jim Morrison's An American Prayer album. His poetry to the Doors music. So I'm a big fan of 60s. 60s music in the psychedelic sense, but I have no interest in psychedelics, such as my
To each their own, I'll say. but it's anything in moderation. But I appreciate, just to go into a little bit of a quite brief on my name. I came up with a concept of peace, love, and music are basically the three experiences of man. Peace is the idea of knowing yourself. You can't have peace unless you know yourself. Love is the idea of knowing another. You cannot know love if you do not truly know another. And music is man's interaction in the physical realm, or represents that. So that's the philosophy behind it, is that there's these three. There's the inner dialogue, the external dialogue, and the interaction with the physical. And man, I've been a fan of yours for a long time. I was really introduced to you from Nick. We've been Nick and I are partnering with my project is DeOrganized Media, and then we are heavily integrated with the Bitcoin Live ethos and partnered with them. And I'm here just to try to push forward the idea of the Bitcoin ethos, decentralization, and not everything has to be all in one direction either. Like, it's really about finding a balance, but we can't find a balance if everything is one way and all centralized and all top down controlled. And that's just where it's at. And what you guys are speaking on and what you guys are working on resonates strongly with what I see as necessary to advance humanity. So thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And I know that we're under severe time pressure, but your triumvirate of explanations there goes almost parallel with my view, which is honor, loyalty, and respect as the three domains that I operate within ethically and morally. But it also in the area that we speak about in these ethical contexts, because I'm an ethicist by nature, is that we have a face we present to the world, which is how we want to be perceived. We have in our head the thing that we think we are, and then back down there, hidden deep in our back brain, is what we're capable of being at moments of great stress and being tested. And that's why one of my favorite, I've 37 tattoos, not before they became fashion statements and when they were associated with criminality. Not that I was a criminal, but they go back a long time. One of them is L'enfer c'est les autres, which is not as cynical, hell is other people. That is not a cynical. A second is fidarsi bene, non fidarsi meglio, which is to trust is good, to not trust is better. That simply means that too many people say, trust me, nothing a contract can do. And the third and final, which is the one that I wanted to say, is acta non verba, deeds, not words. And that's that third piece. When nobody's looking and you're presented with a situation, does your moral compass do what the thing that you present to the world says that it would do? And that's why acta non verba is the triumvirate that you represent in peace, love, music.
Yeah, and I try to live that as well. I try to do the right thing as far as I can tell what that is at any given time. And just to be honest too, part of the reason why Nick's show, my show, why we're successful, why we get growing viewership is because we're presenting something authentic. We're not here to present you guys. When we were chatting before the show, you guys came in and you were like, well, what do you guys want to talk about? Like, what was it? We don't really have any kind of agenda for the show besides letting you guys talk about what you want to talk about and then learning from that and having an engaging conversation to maybe ask some questions that the viewership will also kind of get, because they're also experiencing a lot of this information at the same time. And so,
to be honest, I do have an agenda. I want to spread freedom and decentralization.
Well, all right. That's a fair
Be
point.
honest about it.
No, but right, we're honest, and like that's actually what you're here for, though, Nick. You know what I mean? Like you're not just saying that because it's trendy or you think it's going to sell. It's actually like you really mean it. And that's unfortunately that's not all that common in the spaces we dwell in. There's a lot of inauthenticity pretending at. And so what you guys are working on are actually tools to identify what really is authentic and what isn't.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Well, thank you, Steve, and thank you, Nicholas and Travis. I'd like to say that working with Travis, and I don't feel the slightest bit embarrassed saying this, but of course he's incredibly modest. I've been self-employed for 35 years. We've had a very fast and furious initiation. We did know each other on social audio for a couple of years, but it has been an absolute pleasure. And one thing that Open Code Mission has been very lucky in is that the team has been incredibly, and by pure, I don't know whether it's luck, I don't believe it is. The team is just so tight, and it's a pleasure to work. And I was going to say to come to work, but we don't have working hours because we live, breathe, and eat it. But we also touch grass. I mean, I'm an avid hiker. Travis has his own things going on, as does Daniel, as does Bogdan, as does Back Heat. And the other thing it points to is that we're Canada, Spain, although I'm in Ireland right now, Scotland, Romania, and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is, and the second person is in Canada, are the 6 members of the C-suite. And it shows how much co-working electronically, digitally, and what you can do with the use of tools, AI tools, that we have been able to achieve the type of R&D, and we're about to onboard. Oh, Vesa Kivanen, I believe, that gentleman who said, "Hey guys," is an artist in Finland. You know,
He's a friend of ours.
Very good. Well, I'd like to give Vesa Kivanen a shout out. The child must be nearly a year old now, so congrats.
I was just thinking the same thing, man. I'm super good dude, and I don't know if it's been a year, man. I'm getting old because it's just going faster and faster. But yeah, huge shout out. I love Vesa. He's a good man.
Yeah, I've had a lot of convos with him. So I'd like to thank you guys for having us on. We definitely, before today, said that we wanted to give value to you guys in a conversational way. We don't look at this as an advert at all. And we don't shill. And we never talk, in fact, ever, about our own stuff. And we have taken a step back from social audio and X over the last 4 months, just out of necessity, because we don't have a moment in the day to be able to spend, ruminating. And I no disrespect to those that do, but in the doing of it, talking about it is one thing, but for every hour of talking, the doing of it takes about 50. So we just don't
we'll do the shilling for you so that you can do the working.
Well, thank you. You're very kind, and I'd like to thank you personally, Nicholas, for always being a rock. And I mean that and personally as well, because we do touch on personal topics, which I'm not going to talk about here, but we've needed to sort of have somebody to talk to, and it's been great. So thanks so much, Steve, and thank you, Nicolas. It's been a great pleasure. Stay.
Thank you guys for joining us today.
Take care, guys.